White City, Chapter 3. Elmet had not slept. Light still glowed beneath the door. Silas knocked once and went in. The maps covered everything. Not just the table, the floor, the bench along the wall. Even the chairs had been pushed aside to make room. 2 years of observation, spread out and rearranged. Original pencil lines overlaid with new marks in red chalk. Silas had never seen Elmet use red chalk before. Elmet was standing at the center of it, not studying a map, studying the pattern. His eyes were red at the edges. There was chalk dust on his sleeve that he hadn't noticed. "Close the door," he said. Silas closed it. Elmet looked back at the maps. "I've been wrong," he said. "For 2 years, I've been wrong about what I was looking at." He said it like it didn't cost him anything. The red chalk suggested otherwise. Red chalk connected points that had once stood alone. New routes crossed old ones. "Show me," he said. Elmet pointed to a cluster of marks in the northwest, movement patterns he had logged 18 months ago. Wrong timing, wrong spacing. The probes too patient, too wide, too uninterested in Rustbrook's weaknesses. "I thought they were scouting for resources," Elmet said. "The pattern didn't fit an attack preparation. It fit something else. I didn't know what, so I filed it as anomalous and moved on." He traced the red chalk line connecting that cluster to another, further east. Same pattern, different location. 8 months later. He moved his finger to a third point. And here, 6 months after that. He stepped back. "I have 9 of these clusters, all anomalous, all logged and set aside because they didn't fit any pattern I recognized." Silas looked at the 9 points. "They're not random," Silas said. "No," Elmet said. "They have a center." He picked up the red chalk and drew a slow, deliberate line. It connected the 9 points, then continued backward through time toward its origin. The line ended at White City. "They weren't tracking Rustbrook." "No," Elmet said. "I don't think they were tracking anything." Silas looked back at the maps. Then what were they doing? Elmet was silent for a moment. "I don't know." His finger moved across the red line. "I only know these clusters weren't about resources. They weren't about territory." He tapped the map. "Whatever they were doing?" He looked up. "It was centered around you." Silas stared at the red line. For a moment, he remembered standing beside Orianthi outside the eastern gate. It's not tracking. It's listening. At the time, it had sounded like another one of her riddles. Now, it didn't. Silas looked back at the maps. "It was always about you," Elmet said. He pointed to the first mark. "I just didn't realize it." The room was very quiet. Silas looked at the line on the map. He didn't move for a moment, just looked at it. He thought about the decisions he had made, the routes he had chosen, the people he had found, Rustbrook itself. He put his hand flat on the table. Elmet saw it and looked away. He thought about the hum, the tone that had shifted, higher, like adjustment, like recalibration. "It knows I'm here." Silas took his hand off the table. "There's more," Elmet said. "Yes," Silas said. "Show me." Elmet picked up the chalk again. He moved to a different section of the maps, the area around Rustbrook itself, the familiar geometry of the past months. He drew a new line, then another. "The patrol that hit Jarek's team," he said. "I plotted their approach from what he described. Entry point, direction, the position where the engagement happened." He tapped the map.
That location, he said carefully, is the furthest point east that you have personally been since arriving at Rustbrook. He paused. The trading post run. You stopped there for water on the way back. 4 months ago. Silas absorbed this. They were marking my range, he said. They were confirming it, Elmet said. There's a difference. Marking would mean they didn't know. Confirming means they already had the number and were checking it against reality. He set the chalk down. His hand wasn't quite steady when he did it. He noticed Silas notice and didn't say anything about it. They know exactly how far you go. They know your patterns. A pause. They know Rustbrook through you, not the other way around. The lamp burned steadily between them. Silas looked at the maps. 2 years of careful observation. 9 anomalous clusters. 1 red chalk line running from White City to here. To him. To this room.
It's listening. He wanted to put his fist through the map. It felt as though every step had been anticipated. What he had built here, the people, the alliances, the 2 years of hard work, had been visible to something patient and certain the entire time. The anger was clean and useless, and he set it aside. Later, when there was room for it. Does anyone else know? Silas said. No, Elmet said. I wanted you to see it first. Silas nodded. Tonight, he said. Everyone in the hall. Bring all of it. Elmet looked at the maps. He looked exhausted suddenly. All right, he said. Silas turned toward the door. Elmet. He stopped. You weren't wrong, Silas said. You saw what was there. You just didn't have the full picture yet. He paused. Nobody did. Elmet looked at him for a moment. It wasn't quite enough, and both of them knew it. 2 years. The chalk dust on his sleeve. The red-edged eyes. Still, he nodded once. Elmet looked back at his maps. Silas left him there and walked out into the morning. He had thought he came to Rustbrook. He understood now that he had been led here. White City, Chapter 4. The hall was full in a way it hadn't been since before the second battle. Not loud. Rustbrook's halls were never loud. The people here had learned too long ago that loudness was a luxury, but full. Every position occupied. Elmet's maps covered the table. Spread out beneath the lamplight, the red lines drew the eye, even for those who couldn't fully read them. Silas stood at the head of the table. Miriam to his left, Tomas to his right. Elmet beside the maps, ready. Kala against the far wall with her arms crossed and her eyes moving. Trapper near the door, not blocking it, just near it. The position of a man who wanted options. Garrick at the far end of the table. He had arrived early. That was the thing Silas had noted. Not late, not exactly on time. Early. Already seated when the others filed in. And Orianthi. At the wall, the position she always took. Close enough to see everything, far enough to be overlooked. Jarek near the rear pillar, arms folded too tightly across his chest, watching the maps with rigid attention. Silas looked at the room. Elmet, he said. Elmet began. He was precise and economical. He started with what he had observed, then what he had assumed. When he reached the red chalk line, the room was very quiet. When he finished, Miriam spoke first. "How certain are you?" she said. "Certain enough to have redrawn it 3 times, Elmet said, looking for another explanation. He paused. There isn't one. Tomas's finger moved on the map, the old habit, not touching the lines. So everything we've done?
has been visible to them, Silas said. Yes. No one in the room looked at him immediately after he said it. The alliances, Tomas said. Bartok, Ilara. He stopped. The people we lost building those alliances. Visible, Silas said. The module, Tomas said. The one from the mech base. Visible. Tomas exhaled slowly through his nose and said nothing more. Kala hadn't moved from the wall. She was looking at the red chalk line. Trapper was looking at the floor. He had not looked directly at Silas since Elmet drew the line to White City. Not thinking. Silas knew what Trapper looked like when he was thinking, and this wasn't it. Then Silas looked toward the wall, toward Orianthi. That's what you meant, he said. Orianthi met his gaze. Yes. The pattern? She nodded once. Part of it. Silas looked at Orianthi. The system. The room looked at him. The one you told me about. Orianthi was quiet. Then she nodded. Yes. The one that was listening. Yes. Garrick looked between them. What system? Orianthi looked at the maps. At White City. For a moment, she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was very quiet. The observational thought evaluation system, she said. A pause. OTEQ. Garrick's eyes moved from one to the other. You knew? He said. He sat at the far end of the table with his hands folded and his expression neutral. For a long moment, he looked at Orianthi. Then he looked at the room. So what exactly are we to her? He said. His voice was pleasant, conversational. The room shifted. Silas looked at Garrick. Garrick looked back at him. It's a reasonable thing to ask, Garrick said, mildly. We have a woman at the wall who has known things she hasn't said, who has been inside White City's world in some capacity we don't fully understand, who arrived here at a specific moment and has been useful. He paused. I'm asking what the relationship is, from her perspective. He looked at Orianthi. What are we to you? The room looked at Orianthi. She had not moved from the wall. She was looking at Garrick. Then she looked at Silas. He gave her nothing. Not permission, not refusal. Just his eyes, steady, waiting. She looked back at Garrick. A chance, she said. Garrick waited for more. She didn't give him more. A chance at what? He said. At it going differently this time, she said. Garrick's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. A small recalibration. The expression of a man who had asked a question, expecting one kind of answer, and received something that didn't fit any of his categories. He looked at Orianthi for a moment longer than necessary, filing it, not finished with it. This time, he said. Yes. Meaning it's happened before. Yes. Garrick looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Silas. How old is she? He said quietly. Silas held his gaze. Old enough. Garrick absorbed this. His hands unfolded on the table and refolded. The only visible sign of a man updating his understanding of what he was sitting in the middle of. They didn't have someone like him, Orianthi said. She didn't look at Silas when she said it. She didn't need to. Garrick's eyes moved to Silas, just for a moment. A quick, precise assessment. The look of a man recalibrating the weight of something he had been holding and finding it heavier than he had accounted for. Then he looked back at the table, His face gave nothing, but he had looked. Calla pushed off the wall, moved to the table, looked at the maps with the focused attention she had been withholding since Elmet started talking. "So we're the variable," she said. Not to Orianthi, to the room. Rustbrook, the people here.
The one thing that's never existed before in the situations she's seen. She looked at Silas. That's what she's betting on.
"Yes," Silas said. Calla looked at the red chalk line. "That's not nothing," she said. "No," Silas agreed. Garrick was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, precisely, in the voice of a man placing a marker rather than making a statement, "I want to understand what we're walking into before we walk into it," he said. "All of it. Not the version that's useful for morale. The actual version." He looked at Silas.
"Can you give me that?" he said. Silas looked at him for a long moment. Garrick was not wrong to ask. That was the thing about him. He was rarely wrong to ask. The problem was never the question. It was what he did with the answer. "Yes," Silas said. "But not tonight." Garrick accepted this with a nod. "Tonight," Silas said, looking at the room, "we look at what we know, and we decide what we do with it." He looked at Elmet. "The patterns show White City has been watching. That means they have a model of us, of what we'll do." He paused. "We need to do something the model doesn't predict." Tomas looked at him. "Such as?" Silas looked at the map, at the red chalk line, at White City on the far edge of it, patient and present, and listening. "We stop waiting for them to move. We move first." The room was quiet. Then Trapper spoke for the first time. "To get to White City, we have to go through Fraction X." A pause. Garrett. For a moment, he saw the man standing in the smoke outside Rustbrook. Him again. "Fraction X," Silas said. "We hit Garrett before White City is ready. We remove one variable from the board, and we do it on our terms." He paused. "And we do it in a way that tells White City's model something it doesn't expect." "What's that?" Calla said. "That we're not reacting anymore," Silas said. The room sat with this. Miriam looked at him steadily. "And then?" "After Fraction X," Silas said, "we go to White City." Jarek felt the room change around the words. The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. White City had always existed in his mind. This was the first time he had heard someone speak about going there. Garrick's hands were very still on the table. He was looking at Silas with an expression that had moved past surprise into something quieter and more considered, the look of a man already recalculating his future. Trapper was looking at the floor again. Orianthi, at the wall, was looking at Silas with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Not surprise, not calculation. Something that might, in someone who had been alive long enough to have almost stopped feeling it, have been called hope. Silas looked at the map. "We start planning tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, rest. All of you." The room began to move.